Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you. So, I saw a TikTok today that I wanted to share with you, and in the subject matter in question is in regards to uh, housing, homelessness, and basic economics, and a solution, as it were, to the question posted by this person. I just want to say real quick, a big thanks to the patrons who support the show. More on them at the end. This is the TikTok in question. I wanted to share it with you guys so we can kind of go over together.
I see a lot of
I will be talking more after this video, of course.
housing advocates on this app who talk about the need to build more affordable housing. And while I get where that sentiment is coming from, I think it paints a very inaccurate picture of the actual source of the housing problem. One thing to remember when talking about housing in pretty much any major city is that the number of vacant homes in that city almost definitely outnumbers the number of homeless people. A lot of those homes are simply investment properties, which means that no one is living there and somebody is just waiting for the price of that house to go up so they can sell it and profit. These people are hoarding resources purely for the sake of profit. Also, by contributing to the scarcity of housing in that city, they make the price of housing go up for everyone else. They contribute absolutely nothing to the city, and I think we should be taxing the living shit out of them. I see a lot of
Makes a lot of sense. Sounds like that logic tracks. So law and demand, supply is being sucked into this void of investment, and demand goes up, which makes rent expensive for everybody, therefore lowering access, therefore raising the price and lowering access to housing. That sounds perfectly reasonable. What's the solution? I'd say eminent domain. And a lot of people, upon hearing that, are probably like, well, fuck this dude. I get it, but I'm a man that believes in process and a man who is who is distrustful of big institutions. I am only marginally more trustful of the government than I am a big corporation because I at least have the veneer of being able to vote. Voting with my dollar doesn't seem to work that much. Sure as shit never does. Anywho, you must be wondering, for just a quick recap for everybody watching who doesn't remember what eminent domain is. Eminent domain is the right of the government or its agent to expropriate private property for public use. Sounds harsh, but remember, it also is with payment of compensation. Now, you can argue that there's plenty of cases of eminent domain where that just was not there. So, yeah. Regardless, I want to kind of lay out how a system I think about taking these properties out of the investment market forcefully through eminent domain and out of the hands of uber rich Americans and hedge funds. And I want to do this simply through a nice little graph. So the first thing we're going to look at is, Jesus Christ. Here we have our input, and here I have our output. And we're going to do a logic. What we're going to do, we're going to make what is called roughly a sequence diagram, which is used in my profession as a computer programmer to explain the logic of how we get from point A, the input, to point B, our desired output, and the logic of what needs to happen between points A and B. And this is going to be rough, but bear with me. So here we have our input, and here we have our output. Wish I had a drawing tablet. Maybe I should have kept the one I bought Anthony and bought him another one. Anywho, that unboxing will be done shortly. the first thing we want to make sure is we want to have some safeguards in place to make sure that someone who is like a traveling salesman or works in another state for a lot of the year, or is people who are actually living here and people who are actually keeping their shit here should be able to make sure that it's safe. They don't have to worry about it. Like someone who actually lives here, even if they're gone the entire year, they should still be able to leave their stuff here and not have to worry about that. So I want to put some protections in place. The first protection is reporting is done by citizens. Because yes, while citizens can be annoying, while the American public can be annoying, while the American public can be obnoxious, and while the American public can definitely be entitled in a lot of ways, the best way to prevent the government from just going around and taking up a lot of people's houses if you get the wrong dickhead in power is to make sure that the government can't be the one to initiate it. Now, so you have just this goofy goober who lives in an area and sees that there's a house on his block that was sold. And then nobody ever moves in. The sold sign's gone, nobody ever moved in. It's just sitting there, vacant. Well, if he wants to be a good citizen, he can go down to the Office of General Affairs or whatever, and then say, "Hey, can I get the public records on the sale of this house?" He gets that, and then documents the vacancy for, say, spitballing here, minimum 3 months. That nobody has moved into this house in 3 months. And then he takes this to a local office and says, "Hey, I found a vacant house that nobody's living in. I think it might be good to have help people move in here." Great, that's lovely. And so that person has done step 1. Step 2 is the government will then send a letter. My lovely drawing. This letter contains a question to the person listed as the owner of the house, saying to them, "Hey, where you at?" Basically asking, "Hey, are you living here? Are you planning on living here? Or is this just a vacant investment property?" And then we're going to have some logic here. If yes, I do plan on living here, nothing to worry about. I'm just away for a while, I'm doing my thing, I'm kicking it, it's whatever, yada 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 yada. All well and good. This then goes to a database. And then we're going to put the signature DB here to signify. It just goes in the database. It checks the database, the local database, to say, "Hey, has someone said they are living or planning to live at this house in the near future?" If the answer is yes, great, awesome. And then what ends up happening is, and here's the thing, it has to be the person living there has to either A, be the person, has to either A, say, "Yeah, we're good to go," or B, say, "I'm going to be living there," so whatever. The point of the matter is that it basically connects one name per property. And then what basically happens is, if the answer to that question is no, I'm not planning on living there anytime soon, it's an investment property, and I'm saving it for the time in the future. They'd never say this, of course. They'd try and lie and obfuscate. But basically, the state can go, "Great, yoink." That means we're going to start the process of yoinking this. And then this is where we get into two branching paths. Or three, because there's a third option here. What happens if the person that they call, they hit the DB here and basically say, hey, your name, like, oh no, I'm planning on living there soon, but they said, you already said you were living somewhere for this property over here. They're like, oh yeah, I live over there too. And I'm like, okay, why are you living in two houses? Because the thing is that and the thing is that at this point, this is where discretion can come in. This is where a person will say, hey, I live here X amount of times a week because I am separated from my partner or whatever. That's fine. As long as you can show someone's living in it, that's great. But and so if you're able to prove that you're living somewhere, like that's perfectly fine. And if this goes forward, you essentially will just say, hey, you just come to court, you bring the paperwork and show, hey, I'm living here, I bought this, and this is the things I'm going on, I commute from here, here's like my phone, like all that stuff. And you can do it. It'll be a pain in the ass and it'll affect a handful of people, but what'll end up happening in reality is, because what will happen most of the time is people will lie. And when they lie, you get hit with an X, or rather, my apologies, a check saying, oh, you're lying. You just want to keep this investment property. Great. And so, while it's the end of the road for this, you have these two end up going together in one line, which is starting the eminent domain process. This line stops here. This one goes on. This one goes on. And this one will go on to court, because we'll go on to court, and then upon realizing, oh, we fucked up, you're good. And here's the key point: if someone ever gets to this point here, what'll end up ultimately happening is the addresses that at this point are tied to their names, until there is a sale of those addresses again, any call that is done on them is thrown away. There is a check to prevent it, so people that are dealing with this type of shit they only have to deal with it once, and then they don't have to deal with it ever again. Because the last thing I want is someone to have to fucking ruin their life going every fucking week for these goddamn claims. Makes sense, right? It also prevents dickhead neighbors from mass reporting you if they don't like you. You deal with it once, you're in the system, and then you don't have to deal with it again. Law-abiding citizens had to deal with a little bit of paperwork in a court day, and everything's fine and dandy. And bear in mind, and then from the eminent domain, and the eminent domain process starts. They can, at that point, they can sue, try and stop it, whatever. But it can just go through at that point. And from the eminent domain process, we get our output. Or let's not skip a few steps. From there, the housing is given to the local HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and the housing is then and here's where I think the city and state governments should take more of a role in tracking the homeless. So these should be given to people these should be given. They should work with different organizations within the government and privately that are, and this is key. This is a housing first. You put people in a fucking home, and if it's a shit show, it's a shit show. But for 9 out of 10 people, putting them in a house and having a stable place for them to live will do way more than literally anything else. So you're going to do a housing first initiative. God, that is a terrible F. I apologize. Here. And from there, you will disseminate the housing on an as-needed basis, which, frankly, all comes back to the output. So, 2 things I want to talk about here. I know this is kind of all over the place, but let me just give it a summary. By implementing systems that are designed to protect property ownership of individuals first and fuck over, these are designed to fuck over management and investment companies and hedge funds that are buying up real estate en masse. You know, the whole point of a system like this is to make sure is to protect individual owners first, so that people's rights aren't getting trampled on. Because at the end of the day, while I am more concerned about the homeless people, I also know that that is a huge concern for the everyday homeowner. And and by making it this way, all of these hedge funds and stuff bitching and moaning and complaining about this don't have a leg to stand on, because this system is designed first to protect individuals. You know, individual homeowners have different life scenarios. They might live in an apartment somewhere, own another house somewhere, so on and so forth. So like yada yada yada, and the fact of the matter is this kind of thing is important. Housing is such a goddamn need in a lot of places, and we need more affordable housing. We have vacant housing that rich dickheads are just sitting on, and I think this could be a solution. I did want to add one small thing. One thing that definitely will need to happen before you get to the mailing stage, and I want to insert this right here. You send another human being from the government, usually whether it's an inspector or preferably a home inspector, to the house after a person has made the request. Now, what this will end up doing is this will do a couple things. One, for individuals that are like actually just away, this will give them, if people are just planning on moving in, it'll give them more opportunity to like load in, because there's going to be a long ass queue of people that are going to have to drive out to blocks of properties in an area and like check to see if they're vacant or not. To me, I think that definitely works. Alternatively, this and that same token, what it also does is it also, I thought about this too, prevents, say, someone who divorced a toxic spouse, and the spouse regardless of gender, owns the property, and the spouse is no longer living there, and that spouse wanted to do a giant FU and say, nah, like it's not there. Nobody's living there. I'm not living there. I'm using it for investment purposes. That way to start that which would making another human being go there and just see. And here's the thing: they actually don't, in my personal opinion, don't need to see if like someone is like living there, whether they're supposed to be or not. That actually doesn't matter in this system. They just need to make sure if there's nobody living there, like no signs of life, empty house, not a lot of shit around. It looks like it's kind of dusty. It looks like it hasn't been, like nobody's been around a while. That's different. That is very, very different. And generally, I think that would be a much better way to solve it, because if you got some squatters or something living in a vacant house, it kind of solves the same issue. And you don't even have to get the government involved with that one. Regardless, Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I know that this was like a long roundabout whole thing, but it's like it kind of got me thinking, and it kind of got me angry that like all of these freaking J.P. Morgan, Chase Bank, Capital One, Bank of America, BlackRock, Wells Fargo, like just buying up all of these properties and making it basically impossible for Americans to find places to put a roof over their heads. I don't know. I just thought this might be a good way to help. Also, it fucks over hedge funds and rich people too, so that's always a bonus. Anyhow, I want to just thank everybody for watching, and I wanted to also give a big shout out to all of my patrons you see on screen before you right here, including Reed Savage, Mike Nicely, PT Sean, Oni Top Hatter, American Anthony J. Lopez, and the love of my life, Meta Pavuzi. If you want to continue supporting this show, please consider subscribing. Liking the video, dislike it if you disliked it, and maybe if you're feeling a little generous or you like the content enough and you want to see what else I have to offer you, consider the patron. I won't disappoint you. Regardless, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for spending your time with me. I appreciate you. Bunches and bunches. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I leave you with the illustrious beats of the great Villainous Styles.